That's my wife.
Thank you for coming. We're so excited to see everybody. I'm Kemi Lockheim, and I'm the chair of the Education Committee for the Board of Trustees. And we are really excited about this meeting. It's a bit of a potpourri of topics, but Sarah and Kate from Home and School, as well as Katie Lieberman, worked really hard on coming up with a very well-curated list of topics that seems like everyone is talking about and really wants information on. And so we're happy to host this meeting, the Education Committee, along with Home and School this morning. So it should be a great discussion. And Katie with Home and School has done a lot of work getting a really very group of speakers together to answer all these questions with informed information as opposed to what I might spew out. So without further ado,
Yes, thank you everybody again. I won't spend much time here, just wanted to let everybody know that this, we're going to try to, Kemi and I are going to try to keep time so that we ensure that every question is answered during this speaker session. We know that some of you came for specific questions and we want to allow time for every question. So that may mean that we will have to gently stop a conversation at certain points and hopefully at the end be able to come back to any necessary topics at the end for Q&A. So just know that if we do have to stop at some point, we can come back to any conversational topic that's needed. Just a quick reminder, because we have so many people here, when we answer questions, because of course we want this to be a discussion and participation by everybody. We prefer that we, just for the sake of confidentiality of your own child, and for the sake of keeping this a global, more generally focused discussion, that we don't talk specifically about individual children and that we keep our questions tailored to Rowland Hall as a whole. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn the floor over to Alan Sparrow, who is going to start our discussion this morning.
And it's good for me to lead off that in terms of you do have those questions about your own children, and this may spark that, rather than this be the forum for that, which was Katie and Kemi's point when we talked about this. Then once you've got that spark, write it down and come in and see Jay or Carol or me or Lori or whoever the appropriate person. We do want to hear about it. We want to carry that conversation on, but that really makes more sense to do in a smaller group. So thank you, both of you. We're going to try to tape this. Every time we do one of these, parents who can't make it say, I wish you would do some of these in the evening, but when we do them in the evening, not many people come. So we are trying to tape some of them and put them online. Stephanie's trying that today. Sometimes we bring a professional group in. So we'll let you know whether this ends up online, depending on what you ask. We have to censor it or whatever. So without further ado, then the whole point is that we're going to we have about 6 of us that are going to make various presentations. And they'll make a brief presentation, and then when they're done, that's a great opportunity to ask questions about that topic, and then we'll move on. So we're going to start with Kathy Gunderson, who's our Director of Admissions, talking about who attends Rowland Hall anyway. We've discovered in the last few years there's some confusion over that in terms of what people expect or think. So this is very generic again, but let's start with that. Okay. So Kathy Gunderson.
Good morning. I'm glad that Katie mentioned looking at the global aspect of Rowland Hall in this discussion, because that's really where I'm going to start. And I'm just hoping to give you an overview of who we are. And I would like to also thank my assistant, Sarah McCarthey, for helping with this prezi. I love it, but not completely. What I thought I would do quickly, show you sort of overall how many people are looking at Rowland Hall, how many people actually apply, and from those applications, how many new enrollments we have. There's some really interesting and consistent trends that I found as I was looking at this. So with roughly 200 people inquired at the beginning school, we ended up with 114 applications this year, and out of that we have 56 new students. In lower school, in lower school, we had 145 inquiries, yielding 75 applications and 38 new enrollments. Notice that we end up with about half the number of new enrollees out of the applicant pool, and that was true in beginning school as well. You're going to see a similar trend when we look at the middle school numbers as well. So, with middle school, we have 94 inquiries with 52 applications and 24 enrollments. And again, notice it's about half. And then with upper school, we have 182 inquiries yielding 85 applications and 42 new enrollees. Overall, this is what happens in the admission world. We ended up with 671 inquiries, yielding 326 applications, a record number this past year, with 160 new enrollees, and 934 was our ultimate enrollment this year. So, just giving you more of a visual there. When you look at the overall school, 133 beginning school students, 282 lower school students, 211 middle schoolers, and 308 upper school students. And that's, if not a record, quite close. So there we have 934 students. 23% of our students are students of color. You can see the breakdown of that. I obviously have noticed over the years the increase in the number of multiracial students. 3% of our students are international, coming from Peru, Canada, Spain, Italy, Germany, the UK, China, and Australia. And Australia is where we have the bulk of those students. This year we have 13 students from Australia. Our students have moved to Utah from all over the country. This past year we had students from all of these major cities, and many of you who are sitting in here are the representatives of that city. I don't know if you know much about word clouds, but the larger the font of the word, the more people we have from that area. So from one end of the country to the other and back again. And then once relocated, our students live in all of these Salt Lake Valley neighborhoods, as well as Park City, Ogden, Centerville, Bountiful, North Salt Lake, Taylorsville, West Jordan, and West Valley City. And you can see more closely the cluster of where they are. Over 500 students are from the Salt Lake area, over 200 are from Holiday and Cottonwood, 135 are from the Park City area, and the rest are scattered throughout those other cities. So we do a fair amount of blessing, which is great. We always seek gender balance. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, but I think with 472 girls and 435 boys, that's really, overall, that's quite good balance. 22% of our students receive some form of financial aid, and that speaks to our desire to have a socioeconomically diverse community. That is it. We are going home.
So any question about enrollment? And we'll go out who those students are a little bit. Yeah.
Morning, Kathy. So when you have the figures on applications and then enrollees, are you at liberty to say anything about what percentage of that difference is due to selectivity or just people not actually enrolling once accepted?
That's a good question. There is obviously once someone's admitted, they have a choice to accept or decline our offer. Sometimes a family will withdraw because their plans have changed, and then obviously there are those people that ultimately enroll. Our selectivity rate is somewhere in the 60 percentile level, and that's different for every division, and I can't tell you off the top of my head where each division is, but that's a great question.
Okay, then I think we'll go on to why do class size vary, and is there a school goal for class size? So this is interesting because there's the historical perspective and your individual perspective. So if you're in a class that's small and something that's large, you say, why did the school change its philosophy? But one of the things interesting about our school, let me back up a little bit. We're in a group of schools called the index schools. It's 50 top preschool to 12 grade schools from around the country that have 750 to 1,500 students that all have met certain academic criteria. You have to be invited or accepted in the organization. So we feel we are accepting and comparing all our data in a common way. And about half of these schools, interesting enough, are not full, and about half the schools are full. And so what's going on right now with many schools is that given after 2008, enrollment has become more challenging for, well, actually every single school in the group has had a drop in admission in the lower and beginning school. Every school, of the 50 schools, 49 of them have had this drop. Doesn't mean their enrollments drop because some of them have long waiting lists like Sidwell Friends or Chicago Latin or something like that. But it has been a dip in terms of class sizes in about half the schools. In the lower school, if you notice, as Kathy said, the upper school is the largest it's ever been. That's been a trend where parents have said, I'm going to spend my money for 4 or 6 or 8 years, but not 12 years. And so that's been impacted our enrollment. So when I got here, the board had determined a class cap, I shouldn't say cap, a class goal of not going over 20 per class in the lower school. So any individual first grade, second grade, third grade class, when we hit 20, we would tend to cap it there. Occasionally, very, very rarely, did we go to 21. Then it became so popular, we went up to 4 sections. We didn't fill it with 20, but we had enough. We had enough people, applicants who wanted to come to school. We went to 4 sections. Well, about 18, we didn't fill in with 20. And then after 2008, because of the enrollment dip, we've gone back to 3 sections and made a grade. But because of that varying enrollment, given our market, some of the grades might have such that the class sizes were 3 or 4 sections of, or 4 sections of 15, and another class would be 3 sections of 20. So the school has for a long time said our cap would be 20. But you individual as a parent may have experienced year in and year out a given class that was 15 or 16 or 17. So the school's goals, the strategic plan, the board of trustees has kept the number 20 for before I got here. But you individually may have experienced a difference because of this enrollment vary since the 2008 kind of economic crisis. So when parents have come to me and to Kate and to Sarah and said, you know, why is the school changing its class sizes? The answer is no. It really is depending on what our market has been, but we're keeping it under, 20 or under as our goal. And there's no educational evidence that there's an improvement in the quality of education between 16 and 18 and 20. And in fact, for 22, 24, Punahou, many of you know that school because when Obama went, their cap is actually 24. And I mentioned Chicago Latin, their cap is actually 22. So, we're not even near the top of the cap of these schools that feel that that's the range, say 15 to 25, in which there really is no evidence that that would make a significant difference in the education of children. So I hope that answers the question. If you've gone to a class where you may have had 16 one year and 19 one year and 17, it's not because we're changing what we feel is the right number. It's that we're trying to hold the cap at 20 or below, and we haven't had the luxury of saying, it's going to be exactly 20. In the upper school, it's a little different right now, where we're kind of bursting at the seams, where we have, our class sizes are sometimes more problematic, and we have gone over 20, in part because the class doesn't want to break into an extra section. They want the teacher they've got, and they're happy to have a little larger 21, 22 member class. So does that answer that question for people? Any questions on that? Yeah.
So what would you tell parents who maybe feel like when their class size was smaller, they felt like their child was getting more attention, the teacher knew that their child better, and now that it's a little bit larger, they go into conferences or they talk to the teacher and they feel like the teacher's more overwhelmed? Who should they talk to?
Well, if they feel that, I think they should talk to Jay.
Okay.
To be blunt, I don't think a teacher should feel overwhelmed with 19 or 20 students in a class.
I agree.
I think teachers a good teacher knows their kids with 20 kids in a class, that should not be an issue. You should be able to do a very good job with 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 in a class. So I really don't think, if you're feeling that that's a different issue. I would argue.
I'm going to add to that. I think it's funny, I just talked to Sarah Button yesterday, and she was talking, conferences were a little earlier this year. We started school a week later, and conferences were, I think, 4 weeks in, and so some of the teachers did feel like they didn't have as much information, the lower school teachers, to share with parents because of the calendar. So that may have been a factor, but as Alan said, please do talk to Jay.
Yes.
What are the counts in public schools in Salt Lake? As far as the numbers?
You know, I don't know exactly what they are, but I do know that there are classes that range from 24 to, I know a teacher was teaching 47 kids over at West High School in the high school. So I know it ranges from all over the place. And I know there's some charter schools that have some smaller class sizes because they're trying to fill up their classes, and if they don't, then they would have some financial issues. But I don't know of any of the public schools that have numbers that low.
They have a gold cap around 36 that they try not to go over. So that's a fairly dramatic difference.
Right. Yeah.
The goal is to grow the lower grades, where I know we need students, what, 1 through 3. What happens, this is more maybe admissions related, excuse me. What happens when we get extra people apply and they have maybe twins in 4th grade next year and a kid in 3rd grade? Are we going to turn away at a certain point or add a teacher? How does that pan out next year?
So that's a discussion that, you know, in schools, and we're not alone.
Yeah.
About half of the index schools are like us, and the other half they have the luxury of saying it's 20 and we have a couple people on the waiting list. We have to make that judgment often in May. One of the reasons why we push you, we're trying to find ways to push you more to get your enrollment contracts in on time, so we can make a judgment about, do we want 3 sections or 4 sections? You know, we went from 3 sections in the lower school, we slowly built up to 4, and now we're back down to 3. The economy is better. Will that go back up to 4? Who knows? Based on what we see around the country, we think that we're probably going to settle in at 3, and that'll be a fine number. We're still the 2nd largest school in the Northwest for an independent school, so we're not in financial difficulty in any. You know, we can run a great school at 935 kids. We can run a great school at 700 kids. Not that we would, but so we're not in any kind of difficulty with that. The issue really was we don't want the classes to be too small. So during my tenure, we have added a teacher and then not had the kids fill it. So we had 14 or 15 or 13 in the class because it looked like we were going to be at 64, 65, 66 kids. And then, you know, this is a very mobile community compared to some, in which people move in and out on a regular basis because of jobs, because of the University of Utah. You know, some companies here transfer people in, like Rio Tinto, on a regular basis. So it's very hard sometimes to figure out our mobility. So we make our best judgment. If we made a judgment for 3 and then we have all kinds of people come, then we put them on the waiting list. We almost always have a waiting list in 1 or 2 grades every year, in which we have to say you have to wait till next year to get in.
Has it ever been a thought in February, whenever we commit, to put in the actual contract, just it's a business contract between us and the school to send our kids here, to put the max class size and numbers in that? Does that play in the private school world? How does that?
No, because I wouldn't want to do that, and I'll give you a couple of reasons. So I've been here a long time. We've had 2 years, in 24 years, in which we had classes of 21 in the lower school. Okay, in which it was 1 section of 21 for a family whose parents had been transferred out of town. Company changed their mind. It was middle of August. They were coming back. Our classes were full. There were 3 kids in the family. They'd been at Rowland Hall for 10 years. We were really going to say, I'm sorry, you're going to have to wait a year to come back. So we said, no, you can come back. And we had 21 in that section. And no one objected. And so there's an example where we wouldn't want to say, oh, we promised you 20, now we have 21. That's not right. There's a number of times where it looked like we might have 21, but like the airlines, we have to make a guess how many people are going to leave. So we guessed, and one time we were wrong, but most of the time we're right. Sometimes we guess, as I said, and end up with 4 teachers and we didn't need it. So it's a little bit of an art, And so we don't want to guarantee something that would make us have to add a teacher for one more kid.
Let's do one more.
I just was wondering what the research showed for class size. Like, where is the breaking point, and does it matter based on kindergarten versus a fifth grader? Like, is there research out there?
You know, Richard's a professor at college, and I'll let him jump in. There's a lot of, Richard Badenhausen is our board chair. He's at the head of the honors program at Westminster. And there's a lot of educators in the room. But, you know, they have never, ever had a study that demonstrated here's the cutoff line, here's the line, here's where it makes a difference.
Is there a range? Like,
There is, what I'm saying, there has been no evidence ever that anything between 15 and 25 makes a difference. So somewhere up there, over 25, it can make a difference. And anybody else want to jump in there?
I mean, the only thing I would add is unfortunately, it's totally dependent on the mix of students, right? So in other words, my classes are capped at 15, if you want to send your kindergartners to Westminster. You might have trouble keeping up with the reading homework. I have a class of 15 and a class of 12, and the class of 15 actually runs a little better than the class of 12 because of the mix of students. It's tricky business.
Linda.
As a K through 8 principal in both Hawaii and California, we actually saw the other side of that. We would open up another classroom and end up with, say, 12 students in it. And then parents were concerned that there were too few in the class. In fact, one year, we opened the class, we had 10 boys and 1 girl. So parents said, well, we're going to wait 2 weeks. If you gain any more girls, we'll stay. If you don't, we're going to leave. We gained 3 more girls in the next few weeks. But that was another way of looking at it. Parents did not want the class size really less than 15 because they felt like the dynamics of the classroom, it just didn't offer as much variety for students. So that's one way to look at it.
And in the middle school, for example, we've kind of pushed it so our classes are almost always 20. And the kids and the parents in general are like that. The kids in particular like that. I think that's important for middle school developmentally, that they have more kids in their class, more potential friendships. When you have that peer pressure, that sometimes that you know, cruelty that goes on at that age, and they need to find other friends. So it's actually better to have the larger class sizes in the middle school, for example. We do tend to try to have first grade smaller. So first grade, we really try to have that number closer to 15 or 16. Doesn't always work, but that's our goal.
I just wanted to mention just one thing. In Denver, if that makes anyone feel better, in Denver there was always stories of some of the schools who, you know, of course parents would talk about that. We don't know exactly if that was going on or not, but that, you know, parents would come in to apply like in March or late March when it was so late to apply anyways, but they would plop down $1 million and they would add that kid to the class. So the class sizes really varied sometimes, but I mean, here we're very lucky. I mean, we had heard about stories like that in Denver, and I knew of a particular, like a Coors family came in and, you know, they needed to get in, so, you know, they added one student, or, you know, they added that student. So actually we're very lucky here that, you know, that's not going on.
So again, with the class size, the one thing they have demonstrated as the biggest single factor is the teacher, not the class size. So if you take an excellent teacher with a class of 30, they will do better than a mediocre teacher with a class of 15. So in terms of class size, it's much less significant than the quality of the teacher. And that has been demonstrated. And the other interesting thing, especially as they get older, is the single biggest factor in a child's success in school, single biggest factor whether they will cheat or not in a class, is whether they believe the teacher wants them to succeed, whether they have respect for and like their teacher. And including the cheating study, which was really phenomenal. There was no correlation between cheating in rural, suburban, Catholic, parochial, private, independent, suburban, urban, high income, low income. It was all based on the students' feeling of whether the teacher wanted them to succeed. It was pretty impressive study. Okay, so I think we'll move on to the next thing, which is Lori Miller, where are you? Okay.
Hi, my name is Lori Miller. I'm the academic support counselor for the beginning school and the lower school. And wave at me if my voice gets kind of soft and you can't hear me. So I'm going to follow what Kathy was talking about in terms of who we are and show you a little bit about who our students are academically. So I have 2 graphs. These come from are ERB testing. So these are for a particular grade level, but they're typical of all grade levels over time at Rowland Hall, and these two at the lower school. And quantitative reasoning is predictive of achievement in math and science. Verbal reasoning is predictive of achievement in all the language arts. So you can see the bell curve. That represents a national random sample, independent, suburban, rural, urban, by socioeconomic, low socioeconomic. And the yellow are our students at Rowland Hall. So you can see the percentages down here. 23% nationally would be in the first 3 string lines. We have 3%, 0% in growth. 54% would be in the average band. We have 13% and 27% in verbal reasoning, and 83% of our students are above average in their ability to reason. Quantitative reasoning, 73% above average. So that's our population. High ability, high achieving students. So as a result, our curriculum is designed to meet their needs. And you know, as parents, you've experienced your children coming home, the kinds of projects and assignments and the kinds of reading that they do. Our curriculum is rich, it's rigorous, and it's fast-paced. And so there are some students who will struggle with that profile and that curriculum at Rowland Hall. And so as an institution, we really have 2 choices, and other independent schools face those same choices as far as how do we meet children's needs. The first choice would be that we could deny admission to those students who maybe are falling in this area, and say, you know, our curriculum probably isn't going to work for you. Some independent schools do make that choice. Typically, they have lots of students on the waiting list. They may be selective and just say, our mission is to work only with students who are in this area. At Rowland Hall, we haven't done that for a number of reasons. We think that a diversity of learners is a valuable thing. It helps all of us understand that we all have different gifts and different strengths and different challenges. And a student, for example, who may struggle with math may be great in all the language arts areas, and vice versa. And we may have students who struggle academically, but they're exceptional athletes, or musicians, or artists, or they may be great leaders with great communication skills and ability to work with people. So we've opened our arms to a diversity of students here at Rowland Hall. And what we found is that students who may not have this profile, with support and an excellent teacher and small class size and support from their families, do very well at Rowland Hall all the way through. So it's been a great thing for us to have a variety of learners. Having said that, it doesn't work for everyone. You know, at times, a student may be overwhelmed and may become overwhelmed with the pace or the rigors and the amount of time that they have to spend to do well at Rowland Hall. And their family may also feel that, okay, this is too much for a child. Maybe emotionally it's hard to handle, or financially, whatever reason. But when that happens, we have a process of working with families from their point of view, from our point of view, to help them make a transition and find a place where their child can be successful. Doesn't happen often, but sometimes there are students who find that it just academically is too hard here at Rowland Hall. The profile of students who might need that extra support, the number of students who may need extra help because of a learning difference. Maybe they have dyslexia, dysgraphia, auditory processing issues. Maybe they have ADHD or anxiety. some difference that makes it difficult for them to learn in the classroom. We work as a support team, Jay, Linda, Chuck, and myself, to address those needs and help families find resources outside of school, if necessary, or in school. As a service to families, we have tutors here on campus. We've had a great donation. We have a beautiful annex, learning annex by the gym, where tutors can work with children during the school day when they're fresh and they are able to learn. And the tutors that work here, all of them have been here at least as long as I've been here, so at least 8 years, some many more years than that. Most of them are certified teachers, and they all have special expertise in the area that they work with students. For example, some have been trained in Wilson Reading Program, Orton Gillingham, Reading Recovery, Handwriting Without Tears, lots of other areas of specialization to help students here. And students are able to work with their tutor during one of their specialty classes. So they do miss that part of the program, but they're able to get the support they need to do well in the core program here at Rowland Hall. Some parents ask, okay, if we have great teachers and low class size, why can't the teacher just teach my child? Why does my child need a tutor? And there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one, we do have great teachers, and we do have low class size, and that is a wonderful gift for our children. And I do think that we're able to avoid a lot of tutoring because of those two things. Teachers work really hard to differentiate and to meet all the needs of their students. And they will work with every child one-on-one at many points throughout the year when a child has a particular need. But if a child has a need for consistent support or extra practice that needs to happen regularly, maybe it's a child who really can understand, but they just need extra practice to get the skill. We're not going to slow down the whole class to meet the needs of a few children, but we can have them get the extra practice they need by working with the tutor. So teachers can't provide that kind of sustained one-on-one help for one child without having an impact the needs of the other children in the class. So sometimes tutoring is an important part of helping a child stay at Rowland Hall and be successful. And we'll recommend that for a particular child when we see that occasion coming up. And know that if we recommend tutoring for your child, a lot of steps have happened before we got to that point to help us understand what your child really needs. Some children really do need specialized instruction because of the learning difference. And those learning differences, all of the ones that I mentioned, are not correlated with ability or intellectual capacity. You can have a student who has dyslexia who's incredibly intelligent and smart in many different ways. And so it's not about that. It's about meeting a child's particular needs. So earlier this fall, Alan shared a study with me that it's an independent consumer research study commissioned by HSBC and a financial institution, but they wanted to understand parents' attitudes and beliefs and behaviors about their children's education. So they surveyed 5,500 parents in 16 different countries, and one of the statistics sort of stood out to both Alan and me, and that was this finding right here. 39% of parents have paid for additional tutoring for their child at primary school stage in that survey of those parents in 16 different countries. 44% at secondary school and 23% at university. So it's a pretty common thing for parents to see that their child may need a little extra help and be willing to provide that with a tutor or some kind of academic coach. At Rowland Hall, the number of students that are tutored, the blue is the enrollment for beginning school, lower school, middle school. Those three were the data is from the end of the year last year. Upper school is data from this year. So 134 students are in our beginning school, 4 students are tutored, that's 2%. In the lower school, 276 students enrolled, 38 students are recommended for tutoring by the school, that's 13%. An additional 5% are tutored because their parents chose to provide that tutoring. It wasn't necessarily a recommendation from the school based on academic need, but a perceived need on the part of the parent and wanting to take advantage of that opportunity to provide something extra for their child. At the middle school, 214 students, 27 tutored, that's 12%. And upper school, 309 students, 30 tutored, that's 10%. And an additional 14% that choose to be tutored, on their own, not as a recommendation from the school. Of the 38 students in the lower school, 3/4 approximately of those students have an educational evaluation by a psychologist with an identified learning need or learning difference. So, and they're doing very well. And we take really good care of them. I mean, I feel that we do. Our hearts are in it. So, questions? About tutoring, student support.
So on the other end of the spectrum, for students that may need, an additional challenge because, they're so stacked high that that ninth student and both, that how do you accommodate those?
Hey, that's coming up. Next chapter, so we'll get to that. We'll focus on just the tutoring just for another minute. While you're thinking about possible questions, there's 2 things I'd like to point out. One is that these are the students we recommend for tutoring. We are fully aware that at the upper school, there's more than 30 kids that get tutoring, but those are because a student or a parent has chosen to, they want to tutor because they want to do better on an AP test or an SAT test or something like that. When I compare these numbers to the other index schools, they were actually shocked they were so low because they felt that their recommended numbers weren't necessarily higher, but the number of kids actually being tutored, and in some cases they weren't sure because the parents weren't telling them they were being tutored, because there's this ongoing pressure that we don't think is appropriate, and actually most of the heads don't. So these numbers are actually lower than many of our peer schools. But we're actually happy with the fact that we have intentionally made this decision, and not just for enrollment management purposes, that we like those kids in our school. We think that they add to our school. So many times one of these students is just a terrific leader or a very kind child or enriches the class in so many ways, but these are children we want at our school. And if this is what enables them to stay at our school, then we're thrilled.
On that note, I forgot to talk about the financial piece of this, because there is a cost to tutoring. And some independent schools raise everyone's tuition so that they can hire tutors or have a learning center, and then that is provided for students. But because the percentage of our students who need the extra help is so low, we've made the decision to keep our tuition lower and to ask the families to provide that support for their children. So that's the way that happens at McCarthey.
So those numbers are kids who are recommended for tutoring, yes. or are they ones who are actually receiving it? How do you guys manage it if it's recommended but the family doesn't want to accept the recommendation?
We handle that carefully. Because that's tricky, and that does happen occasionally, and usually over time and through a process of helping them understand their child as a learner and to see the ways in which their child struggles, usually we're able to come up with some solution that works for the student.
It does happen though, where we make a recommendation but not a requirement, the parents choose not to have it. I have a parent of an upper school student now said, you know, Alan, you recommended in first grade and I didn't. I fought you through third grade and it was the biggest mistake I made. You know, and my child's still struggling now a little bit where I think that she could have gotten caught up. I wish you'd been harder on us. Or maybe if you'd given it to us free in first grade and primed the pump, then I wouldn't have fought it so hard. But it's interesting because she's talked to me about how she's talking to me about how we can encourage those people who resist it from resisting it. There occasionally, for financial aid families, we help with the tutoring if it's a financial aid situation where they need it. That's unusual, but it does happen. We have gotten to the point where we've said to the family finally, if you don't get tutoring, the child can't come back. Our teacher needs help. This is there's been a testing, it's a very specific learning disability. It's not one of the more common ones. The teacher says, I want help. I want an expert to tell me what is the best way to deal with this child. And if we don't get that help, then I'm sorry, we can't deal with your child. Because we want the teacher saying, I want an expert to give me the tools to be the most effective teacher I can with this child. So we have done that. That's very rare, but it's happened.
You mentioned that obviously there's steps that go into deciding whether to make that recommendation. How far along into those steps do you involve the parents saying, we're doing testing or we're making these evaluations to determine whether this is the case?
That's a great question too, and it starts with parent-teacher conference and progress reports. So those are two primary ways of communicating with parents about their child's educational experience. And we welcome parents calling us whenever they notice something at home. You know, my child's really struggling with this in math or in science. You know, we need some help. We want you to talk to us as teachers. So we start there, and then suggestions are usually made, you know, before tutoring. We'll say, your child needs some extra help with, I mean, early on when kids are learning how to read, it might be learning their high frequency words. So can you provide some extra practice at home, and the teacher's doing this and that at school, and let's see if we can get that going. So we monitor progress, and if we don't see the rate of progress that's going to help that child succeed in the classroom, then we come back again and say, okay, let's add some more layers of support. Maybe let's work with the tutor for a little while. And if we do early prevention, and for students, especially with reading, if we start in kindergarten identifying students who may be at risk, there are several assessments I do that will give me red flags for dyslexia or other reading issues. And teachers will recommend students, and I'll do those assessments, and then we'll get some support right away. Early intervention is amazing at preventing problems down the road.
So one more comment on tutoring, then I think we'll move on, which is because it feels right there. Used to be a lot of schools waited until about third grade to strongly recommend tutoring, which was the case at Rowland Hall quite a long time ago. And what we discovered and all the research showed, and when Carol Blackwell came to the school, she also pointed out the research that she brought, which was that a lot of parents say, well, can't you see if developmentally my child is going to develop out of this? And so we certainly don't want to make a child or family feel bad when in fact developmentally kids learn how to read and do things at different times. But for those students who have an identifiable learning disability or dyslexia or something else, by starting early we made a huge impact on their ability to catch up and then maybe not need tutoring in the future. So there is a little bit of a dance in those first early grades in the beginning school. The teachers in the beginning school are often saying, look, here's something to watch. And if this doesn't improve in the next year or so, then I think we should perhaps look into this area. But let's just watch for now. So we do that. But if we really have a problem, catching it early can make a big difference. So last quick question, and we're going to move on.
I don't, if this isn't the right time to talk about it, we can talk about it later, but I was just curious how the school handled, if you feel like you need to recommend any type of medication for different issues.
So the school will never recommend a medication. What we will do is we'll say, this is something you should go to your doctor, the psychologist that's doing the testing. So we may bring up the topic, but we're not doctors. We're not going to say, here's the prescription. What we're going to say is, this is one of the tools that can be used. please discuss this with your pediatrician, or if you're having a psychologist giving the testing, whether the psychologist thinks this is a good idea or not. So we may bring it up, but we're not going to say we think it should happen. We think, I mean, Lori actually and Annie or Donna in the upper campuses may bring it up as saying it's something you should look at. But unless I'm mistaken, we've got some principles here. I don't think we ever say to a parent, you should do this.
Do you ever have issues where, let's say they do go to another professional and they don't recommend medication, but either the teacher or somebody else in the school really wants it?
So
I don't know if that
principals,
has ever happened.
Carol?
Well, you know, I think that we always want to have a really strong relationship with the family, and I think part of what we try to do is really sharing information. So if a family was connected, then I think we would have older people like Lily or Chuck myself, the teacher, and try to put together the things that and make a decision together.
With the outside professional, if your child, you know, is seeing a psychologist or a therapist or a pediatrician, we often get permission to talk to those professionals, and they help us and we help them.
The bigger issue is sometimes the pediatrician or the psychologist will recommend a drug for ADHD, for example, and the parent's resistant. And we then try to be the intermediary and discuss the pros and cons. And there are certain kids whose dramatic improvement on some of these drugs is significant, and there are other kids whose improvement isn't that great and really struggle with what it does to them personally. So we are very cognizant of the fact that the extremely positive effect that some of these drugs can have on some kids do not work for all kids, and in fact can be a negative for other kids. You see Katie, who was involved in this kind of thing, nodding her head, knowing full well that there are some kids who it's a life changer for, it's so positive. But there are other kids it's just not working for, and the slight improvement is certainly not worth the negative impact it has on their feelings of anxiety oftentimes, or feelings of I just don't feel like I'm myself. So we really want to deal with you as an individual. These are not magic bullets. They are magic bullets for a few kids, but they're also not necessarily. So we want to, as Carol said, partner with you. Okay, so let's go on to, there's a new math specialist, and some you may not know of that because we haven't publicized it much, and we're going to. Jody Spiro and a number of kids have asked whether we're married, and we're not. We don't even spell our names the same, but Jody just had one the other day and just said, Alan, I had to tell someone that no, we're not married. So in case they ask, I hope you'll support me in this. It's part of the strategic plan. We're saying we really want to improve our math and science approach to kids. We already have a science specialist in the lower school. We have kids in the lower school who struggle with math. We have kids in the lower school who really are quite interested and enriched. And I'm not going to use the word I'm going to say now one time, gifted in math, because that gets to the idea that you either have it or not. And the school is really pushing this concept of mindset, because the research on it is so strong, is that your attitude about how you do well on a subject is so important. So you as a parent, if you didn't do well in math, please don't tell your kids, well, I didn't do well in math either. You're setting them up to thinking that they can't do well. So, but we do have kids that really love math, that want to do more, that because of that they're doing well, and perhaps they have abilities in that area that enable them to do well, so we want to try to challenge them better. Even again, with a small class size and things, there's only so much that we can do. So we fortuitously fell into trying this a couple of years ago, and it went so well, the Board of Trustees agreed to fund a full-time math specialist. So Jody works with kids throughout the lower school in math, and I'll let her talk about what exactly she's been doing this year.
So I've been a classroom teacher for 11 years, and this is my 5th year at Rowland Hall. And as Ellen said, a couple of years ago we tried this out, and it's been really an amazing opportunity. So my position, or my goal with this position, is to motivate students to seek challenges, to observe mathematical situations around them, and ultimately, perhaps most importantly, to enjoy math. So what I do every day is I'm in a classroom once a week, or not once a week, I'm in the class in each classroom for an hour once a week, and I'm working in one-on-one and group settings. I collaborate with teachers in many ways where we identify students who need some challenge or students who need some mathematical reinforcement. I work on assignments that reinforce mathematical concepts or broaden their knowledge. I collaborate with teachers by co-teaching a lesson with the teacher, or I teach the lesson while the teacher can then conference with students. Or I work in small groups with math rotations, reviewing assignments with students, or going over a test, which just can be really powerful for a student to immediately go over their mistakes or see what they did well. You know, math, much like public speaking, can be anxiety provoking. So it's a priority of mine to help students to develop perseverance and learn how to effectively approach problem solving to help with that anxiety. I was working, or just like athletes, that perfect balance of being calm yet focused keeps you in the right moment and keeps you with your best performance. So I've given that exact analogy to kids, and a lot of the kids at this school are athletes and they can really understand that. So I was working with a 5th grade class of an algebra lesson, and a couple kids I could tell were getting a little worked up, so we stopped and talked about that. We took some deep breaths, and at the end of the lesson I had kids share what they had learned. One boy said, "I learned that I do best when I'm most relaxed," which if he can apply the insight to all subjects, I mean, that's a win, if you ask me. Teachers here are really skilled at assessing their students' strengths and weaknesses, and they work tirelessly to keep them motivated, engaged, and succeeding. Our culture, our school culture, is one that values hard work and really celebrates improvement, which are the growth mindset, the main tenets of the growth mindset. Language can be a big predictor of that, or a big influence on that. So small tweaks in kids' language can really affect their overall attitude with math. For example, I was doing a subtraction lesson with a 3rd grade class, and one little girl said, "I'm just not good at subtraction." So I immediately had her stop and say, "I'm getting better at subtraction." And I'm not kidding, she sat up taller, straighter, and was much more productive for the rest of the lesson. That small tweak in her statement changed her perception of her situation, and in a positive way. But at the same time, I try to set an expectation for healthy struggle. So by doing that, if I'm working especially on a challenging problem, I'll set the stage of saying, you know, this is going to be challenging. I expect you to work with it. I don't expect you to solve it right away. If you are getting frustrated, come at it from a different angle. And that's that idea of developing perseverance and how to effectively approach problem solving. Another example, I was working with a group of 3rd graders on a challenging problem, and I'd done that same thing of setting up the expectation of, this isn't going to be that easy. And I was walking around helping, and I heard one little girl say to her classmate, "We can't give up, because if Mrs. Spiro says it's possible, then it's possible." Which, I mean, I could have left at that moment. I did much better than that. But, you know, I didn't leave, and they stuck with that problem, and they were so thrilled when they solved the problem. Another one of my goals is to get kids to think mathematically and to notice math around them. I'm doing this, promoting this by posing mathematical questions that are situations that are happening at Rowland Hall. So for example, during the school's food drive, our goal was to collect 2,000 pounds. So I had a question near the food bins of approximately how many cans would we need to get to 2,000 pounds. I sat in on a 5th grade class while they took a random sampling, they found the average can size, they converted units, and then they found the answer. These kids were motivated, engaged, and applying what they had just learned from their data unit for an hour. They were working on this problem. My big idea is to have a school-wide mathematical problem that the kids have a web clip on their iPads that links them to a video. And then there's a little form where they can submit an answer. So November's video was me walking from my office, which is in the annex, to the main school, because I take this trip several times. So one day I would just casually wonder at what point, how many times do I have to do this to have walked a mile? So the video is me taking this trip, and then there's the question of after how many trips have I walked a mile? And my intention is to ask a question that the kids have to work on it in many ways, and that they have to find the information. They have to figure out what information they need, then they have to find the information, and then solve the problem. My hope is that it sparks curiosity, and that it gets kids talking about mathematical situations, and that eventually they're the ones posing the questions. And you can see the video, it's very great, but, but it was playing in the foyer, and then Stephanie was a huge help with this. But it is on the web page, and then I'll do it every month, change the video. And so far, I may have had kids out there with rulers and yardsticks and trundle wheels, and kids have been asking me questions. It's been very fun. So hopefully that momentum keeps going. One of the things that I love that I get to do is work with small groups. And I work with kids who need, I work closely with the teachers first to identify who needs some support in the form of clarification or challenge. I work with kids who are still developing mathematical reasoning skills and kids who need to extend their classroom learning. It's really those extension activities that I love because for me, problem solving is creative and a very enjoyable process. And I hope that's what I'm imparting to these kiddos. So when I do these sorts of activities, I pick things that are like logic puzzles, number puzzles, really engaging, interesting problems. And then we work on those problems, and then at the end I always have the kids create their own problem based on what we just did, which they love to do. I've often seen kids who, after we've created these problems, giving their puzzle to a teacher or a student later that day or later in the week, which is super fun when I see them, when they don't know that I've seen them giving their problem. And I found that when I've given kids the freedom to play with numbers, they often comment on how much fun it was. Just recently I was working with a group of third graders, another group of third graders, and one of the boys said out loud, "This is the funnest thing I've ever done. It's awesome but challenging." Well, there might be a slight exaggeration there, but nonetheless he got the message that math is fun and that solving a difficult problem is really enjoyable. So that's my job in a nutshell. It's continually evolving and is entirely dependent on the short-term needs and the long-term goals of the teachers. We work closely, and the teachers, like I said, it's already an amazing math program here. They work so hard, and I'm just one piece that can help bolster it, make it even better.
All right. Questions for Jody? All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
For the group that needs support or a group that needs to be more challenged, do you actually take them out of the classroom, or are you doing it while the math lesson is going on?
So I do take them out while the math lesson is going on, and then we either work in the hallway, or if another classroom has a vacant space, like the chess room sometimes, he's not always here, or the lower first grade Spanish teacher, so I'll go in there. But usually it's in the hall or in a different space. Yeah. Yeah.
How can we help our kids at home with math?
Yeah, good question. One thing, talk to your teacher for sure. Talk about specific skills that perhaps they've noticed that the kid needs shoring up. Alan mentioned language. It's a huge one. So if they're getting discouraged, don't play into that. You know, say, it's okay, I know this is challenging, but you can do it, and everybody has to work at it. Not letting them defeat themselves, not letting you influence their attitude. Little things like finding out, I know a lot of teachers and parents struggle with the communication of how math is taught now. It's very different for some people. Finding out strategies that your teacher is teaching might help too.
There was a lot of Googling involved last
Yeah.
There was some YouTube and maybe an app.
That is totally helpful because there's a ton of great YouTube videos of people explaining ways to solve problems. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
One of the things that Carol's done is she's done some math nights to help parents, and Jay is planning to do that probably next fall because we're developing some of our math curriculum this year, which will be specifically for parents, how can you most effectively help. For this year, I would suggest you go to your child's teacher. Say, how can I help with this? But we'll do some more generic things probably next fall, Jay, is that right? After Jody's worked with the teachers and see if there are some tweaks we want to make on the math curriculum.
I have hopes to have a few teachers make some videos of specific strategies they use in class and then somehow get that on the webpage or something where parents can access that. That's on my list of big ideas. So it's coming.
Okay, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Do you feel you hit all the students here?
Yeah, that was one thing I was definitely going to say, is over the course of the year I will have worked with nearly every student, which is amazing, it really is.
So one of the things that Jody does, and then Wendell's got something to add, is she works with each individual teacher to decide how best to break up the class in this situation. Should Jody take the ones that perhaps need a little more help, or the ones that need a little more challenge, or vice versa? So even if she didn't work with every child, each class is getting the benefit of that extra math support one way or another. Wendell, you were going to jump in with something.
I was. Just the parent who was talking about Googling and looking for YouTube videos. It's a great thing for your kids to see, that you're working on it too with them, and that it's okay to not know everything right away. And then I just wanted to say, Jody's kind of a genius. She's amazing. The question that she posed with the students trying to estimate how many trips it takes to make a mile, that's what curriculum specialists would call an essential question. You can't Google that answer. You have to figure it out yourself. You have to work on it to get the answer. And it's a beautiful question. She's a great researcher.
Well, and that's the idea of that, is that's real math, in that real mathematicians don't have an answer in the back of the book. And they have to find the answer, and they have to find the right information, and then they have to see if it works. I mean, sometimes math is just making stuff up and see if it works. So that is why I wanted to do that. This is real math. That's how it works.
Okay, one last question here, Tyler.
I just wanted to keep a captive audience. I'm Tyler, I'm the middle school principal, and wanting to thank Jody and the lower school team for sending us wonderful mathematicians in the middle school. And just one thing about the strategic plan, we talk about math and science, it actually is coming from a place of strength. We just received our ERB data, for example. We are above the independent school national norm as far as science. I mean, there was a little bit of concern, like, wow, we need to really get this a little bit stronger. I'm like, we're trying to make everything stronger, but we are coming from a place of strength. The other thing I wanted to mention, going back to Lori's data, do you see how many people are in the 8th and 9th study 9 for math? Okay, so when we get to the middle school, it's a little counterintuitive to have tracked math for a growth mindset. But in a growth mindset, anyone can do calculus, but maybe not when you're in 6th grade. So it is something that I want to make sure everyone truly understands about our rigorous math program. When we get to 6th grade and there's conversations about what classes they're going to be taking, that traditional 6th grade math is set for that 8th and half of the 9th study 9. We have a quarter of our kids who go into a more advanced, what we call compacted math. We actually have some kids who are so strong and moving so far ahead, they might even move to a 7th grade math class. But that is the nature of math as they progress. We don't try to call them pre-algebra, algebra, I mean, technically everything before algebra is pre-algebra. But we want to get into this mindset of math 6, 7, and 8 because we can actually differentiate better. We can hit our stronger students better when we're really trying to do what Jody's doing, because we have 3 math specialists in the middle school. They're called 6th, 7th, 8th grade math teachers, and can really push them at all ends. So I'm really happy with where our math program is in middle school right now.
So going on to what we do, is the next question we're going to address is how do we address the need of students who need more challenge working in a given subject, in all subjects. And Linda Toma, the assistant principal of lower school, is going to talk about that for a minute.
Good morning. I almost want to say everybody just jump up and stretch. Yeah, wait for a minute. That's what we tell our students. First of all, I hope that no matter where your child is at, you feel that your child is being challenged. Because as an inclusive school, our goal is to make sure that we challenge every child to their potential, that we push them to the best of their ability, so that maybe even if your child's in the middle, you feel like they're really being challenged. And I thought back to when we moved back here 8 years ago and my daughter came to the high school. And the first year, her freshman year was pretty tough. First of all, she had the toughest biology class ever and loved Peter Hayes so much. He was amazing. And came home with her first C. And I was literally shocked. And I literally thought, this is too hard for her. We might need to switch schools. And then I instantly thought, okay, think education, like being a parent. And I realized I would much rather have her finishing with a C in a program that she was being challenged way up here than have her in a program that the expectation was right here and you were doing well. So she ended up staying and then coming back for senior year. So she was here a year and a half. We switched her because her brain couldn't take so much thinking in 10th grade. She came back her senior year, and our real goal was we wanted to make sure she was ready for the program in senior year. Then when she went to the U, we had used enough, so my daughter decided to stay here. She came home the first couple weeks and said, oh my gosh, Mom, it is so easy. I did almost all of the stuff I'm doing in a couple of my classes my senior year at Rowland Hall. I was like, there you go. So for a parent. Maybe if she'd have gone to Stanford or Harvard, the story would have been different. At any rate, I do want just to, on any parent's level, to think about if your child does need to be challenged, you all should be thinking that your child should be challenged no matter where they're at. So a couple of things that I wanted to talk about, and I think they'll be brief, so I'm going to make mine shorter. I know you're all, you've been sitting here, we have a couple other people to go. Obviously, differentiated instruction. Making sure that you hit all of those different types of learners in the classroom. These are things that we see in the classroom, and Jay and I are in the classrooms every day. Those tactile, visual, kinesthetic learners, those auditory learners, making sure that the teachers are reaching out to those, because I have to be honest, I went to Lori the other day when we were doing ERBs, and I said, Lori, I'm a little bit concerned. I just was in third grade watching ERBs, and I don't think this girl is paying attention. Do we know anything about it? So we went and we looked at last year's ERB on the listening part. She was in the 99 percentile. She's just one of those people. She learns, she can be looking around. And so it really was a reflection of, we can challenge those students who we really don't even know how well they are paying attention. Also, just the flexible pacing that we see happening in our classrooms. You can have, the one nice thing about our common areas is you can have groupings, and students are grouped, and they don't necessarily know which group they're in. Maybe you have your stronger readers in one group, your stronger spellers in another, but we can make sure that there's the flip teaching going on. We know that they all have different backgrounds, no two learners are alike. Putting them in a group of readers that are on their level. There's also the independent challenge, which we definitely see. For example, a writing assignment might mean that students are writing, maybe they're doing a 5-paragraph essay, but we know, that teacher knows this particular child or these particular children need to be challenged. I'm going to ask them to expand on the topic. I'm going to ask them to start thinking about synthesizing and evaluating what the topic was. Maybe on a book that we've read, I think these children can come up with a really good ending on their own, to give them the opportunity to be creative and to take their writing further than it needs to be. Also, we have a variety of ways that we allow students to show what they know, to demonstrate knowledge. Maybe I'm not the best writer, but I'm really good at showing something on an app, or I want to work with a partner and demonstrate what I just learned in my 5th grade social studies unit, and we're going to do a skit, we're going to do a video, we're going to create an app. So there are different opportunities that they can hone in on what really gets each child thinking and what challenges them to do the best they can. Also, using compacted teaching and learning or independent studying to allow students that need to dig more deeply into topics, to challenge them to think more, kind of like the inquiry-based learning. We want to just make them ask more questions than what we might expect for other students. So ongoing assessment that we use, and we do it at least 3 times a year, helps us to make sure we're hitting those learners who also need to be challenged, that we can take them to the point where they're not sitting there feeling bored. And one of the things that Lori mentioned, sometimes parents choose to have their child tutored because they want an extra challenge on top of what the challenge is happening in the classroom. It may not be needed, but the parent wants to have that happen. We have a lot of students who win writing contests, spelling contests, state and nationally. We help them have the opportunities to show us how they might be able to be challenged in decoding and comprehension and fluency strategies. The writing workshops, even in 1st grade, our little 1st graders doing writers workshops, you will see a variety of different skill, handwriting, critical thinking in the writers workshops, the books that they make when they're in 1st grade. Particularly, just a couple of examples so that have happened in the 3 years that I've been here, this being my 3rd year. The 1st year here, we had 2 3rd graders who, really bright, wanted to just do something to make a difference in the community. So they wrote a proposal and found out about recycling, wrote a proposal, did this on their own, raised some funds, and were able to put 3 recycle bins on our campus. That was going outside of what the norm was. They needed some coaching along the way. We've had students, I can think of a 3rd grader last year, really good writer. The rest of the students might be still working on a short story. This child had written 4 chapter books. And not only was she writing them, she took them to her teacher, but she also brought them to me and gave me copies to read, which was really impressive. I really liked that. The year before that, we also had a student who he really liked writing, but he was also an excellent artist. So rather than just doing the writing of the story, as he did each chapter, he did an illustration so that he could show it to his peers who might not understand his story, but the illustration itself was a really good one. In our music classes, for example, Cindy Hall, we have an amazing music teacher. She can pinpoint those students who need that extra challenge in music. Maybe they need to be, they're more extroverted, and they would be someone who would take a speaking role in a performance. Some of them, she'll let them write their own music. Then they'll get with their group, and then they'll be able to teach the group the rhythm and the music to that. I noticed when I was visiting PE class in the beginning school the other day, the PE teacher had talked with the group on Friday. They were talking about the body parts, and so she would point to each body part. One little boy raised his hand every time, and as I walked out of there, I thought, I had no idea we had that many body parts. Things we don't even think about as an adult. So as you can see, there are a lot of ways that people, your children are being challenged, that teachers can do in the classroom. But trust that if they think that your child needs to be challenged, they're going to do it. But if you ever want that, and you have not asked that question, ask the teacher, you know, my child's strong in science. What are we doing to challenge them in science? One of the greatest things you'll see is when we have third grade and they do the Rube Goldberg machines. You can tell those students who really are thinking about engineering and robotics, and that's another program that we offer throughout after school. Is if your child really wants to do robotics and engineering, there are opportunities like that too. So, you know, specific questions about how we might challenge them that you were thinking of before you came in. If we could take a couple questions.
I was just wondering how you address the fact that despite the range of academic capacities, there's the commonality of just age development and just in human development, what's appropriate, and how do you balance those two things? Like, no matter how much they can achieve, how much time do you spend asking them to achieve?
I like that question too, and you just made me think about a third grader last year who was reading the book To Kill a Mockingbird. The father's an attorney, so it makes sense. But I don't think he understood. It was appropriate for him to read. It was a book his parents wanted him to, but I don't think he understood all of the underlying meanings. So it wouldn't be something we would expect him to, but find out what he does. Or another book that sometimes children read is Animal Farm, because they think it's this really cute story. That's okay. It's age appropriate. It's age appropriate. But as they get older, you can have those conversations about what does this really mean politically, you know, what are the diversity things that are really implemented in the story that as they age, they can come to understand and have discussions about. And I always say, you know your own children, when you're having discussions, have a discussion with them about to the point where you think it's appropriate. And most kids, I'm thinking about when my girls were younger, even things as simple as maturity, I would say to them, okay, it's time for us to have a talk. You tell me when you're ready to stop. But I also did that with math, because I wanted them to practice math at home. I would say to them, okay, let's just do a few math problems, and when you think that that's enough for today, but we have to, I would give a minimum. We're going to do 5. I have 10, but let's do 5. And at 5, I would say, is this enough? Sometimes they would be tired and say, after 3, okay, that's it. So let them decide. You can still challenge them, and you can still find what's age appropriate. A child in the 4th grade is not going to want to come home and do 2 hours of homework.
So with that, let me also encourage you that if your child is indicating they want to do more, that's great. But if your child isn't indicating and you think they should be doing more, that's not so great. There's a great book called How to Raise an Adult right now, which we're actually going to have a homeschool parent forum on in January. And I encourage you to read the book or come to it. And it really talks about how let the child develop this. I mean, I can think of one family in particular where the girl just really wanted and needed this challenge. She wrote a 400-page novel in 4th grade here. You know, so the parents thought that really the son should be really pushed too, you know, in the same way. He had no interest in this, and it was becoming a battle between the son and the parents, which actually probably was counterproductive. He took off in 10th grade here and just did amazing stuff. He was not ready, he was not interested. He saw it as a punishment that he would be doing this extra stuff. Whereas the girl, and this isn't a boy-girl, it could have been the other way around, but in this family it was that way. So even with your own children, be careful. You don't say, well, but you know, Jill wanted this, why Johnny, or vice versa. Let it come from the children. And if the children are looking for more of a challenge, talk to the teacher. But if your child you think really could be challenged more, but shows no interest and wants to go out and play, let them go out and play. So that is the one issue that does come up here sometimes, where I ask the parent, is this coming from your child or you? And the parent says, well, it's really coming from me, but unless you really see your child as not being stimulated and being bored in school on a regular basis, let the teachers develop that.
And that's a good point, because I remember thinking back as a teacher, sometimes parents would pressure the child so much that it stifled the creativity that they would normally have had in that subject area, and also it could harm their self-esteem, because they were thinking, I'm supposed to be doing this, but I don't really want to, and I'm expected to do it.
So in trying to move along here, we're going to go next to Chuck, which is do boys do as well at Rowland Hall as girls? So Chuck.
So I'm Chuck, the emotional support counselor, so I'd be the guy that your child did read Animal Farm probably. It is a valid question that was posed about do boys do well at Rowland Hall, and it's one that not only is an issue that we face here at Rowland Hall, but at many private and public schools, especially as we see the statistics on the number of boys versus girls entering and finishing college. So it's an issue that we've cared about deeply for many years here at Rowland Hall, and in our efforts to support all children at our school, and I emphasize all children, not just boys, but girls as well, we've been very diligent in providing faculty many opportunities to learn about boys and girls and the best ways to support them. And examples of some of these efforts include Katie Lieberman, who's presented to beginning school faculty on the latest research about boys and school. Child psychologist and author of Raising Cain, Michael Thompson, has presented twice at our school. Michael Thompson has extensive experience with independent school students, and especially with boys. We've had Michael Durian, author of such books as The Wonder of Boys, Boys and Girls Learn Differently, and The Mind of Boys Present. Alan Sparrow and Katie Lieberman led a very well-attended discussion of the book Masterminds and Wingman by Rosalind Wiseman. Psychologist and author of Reviving Ophelia, Mary Piper, is presented on the special need of girls. We do have an extensive faculty resource library that has all of those books that I just mentioned, as well as books such as Pink Brain, Blue Brain by Lisa Elliott, Raising a Healthy Son by Don Eliam and Jean Eliam, and Girls Will Be Girls by Joanne Deep. So we do have those resources. We've made an effort to educate faculty on the special needs of boys and girls. As a school, we do want to ensure that all students do feel listened to, that they feel understood, they feel safe, valued, nurtured. But we do know, however, that boys and girls are wired differently, and both do have their special needs, be it the quiet girl or the high-energy boy, and that can also be vice versa. And that based on best practices and research, we need to differentiate our teaching, our problem solving that we do, our classroom management, based on those needs. Research by psychologists like Michael Thompson, author of Raising Cain, and William Pollack, who wrote Real Boys, tells us that boys do well, or do best, I should say, in schools that honor not only their physicality and high energy, but also their emotional side. And I feel that Rowland Hall actually does fairly well on both accounts. With respect to boys' physicality and high energy, I need to say that as I spend time in classrooms, I'm in classrooms a lot, and I have to say, this is kind of a different forum to actually have all eyes on me. And 1, 2, 3 eyes on me, yeah. So, but I do spend a lot of time in classrooms, and am impressed by the many ways in which our teachers do accommodate that high energy boy or the girl whose focus and attention is enhanced when their body can be in motion. And some of the accommodations that I see in classrooms include a second grade classroom where students can choose to sit on a bouncy ball, on a squishy cushion, and have their feet rest on a bungee cord stretched between the legs of the chair. I've seen classes where students can choose to stand at their desk. In fact, most classes allow students to stand at their desk, using manipulatives for busy hands, all kinds of accommodations that allow the student to focus on the subject at hand rather than whether their body is in motion or not. It takes a lot of mental energy for many kids to keep their body still. And if we can rechannel that mental energy into learning, all the better. So these accommodations allow that to happen. In all classrooms, there are lots of opportunities for kids to move around the room, working in various size groups, being paired with a partner, working in the hall. I'm seeing an increase in the use of movement to teach academics, such as what Jody does. I was in the hall the other day and saw Jody with a group of second graders playing a very active math game with opportunities for a lot of movement as the students were learning that math concept. And there's a lot of research that shows pairing motion with academics is a great way to tap into that child's high energy and physicality. We have a very strong PE program, ample recess time that assists in providing outlets for boys' physicality and high energy. And as I meet with new students, I do a new student support group with all of our students, new students, and they consistently tell me that a couple of things they like most about Rowland Hall, it's no surprise, are the number of recesses that we have, and our PE program. So it does speak to that opportunity to really get out there, move, get some of that adrenaline burned off. So with respect to a boy's emotional side, it's important to help boys and girls develop an emotional literacy, to help them develop an emotion vocabulary. We know that boys are socialized to repress emotions and to be stoic, to wear that mask that William Pollock talks about in his book, Real Boys. And through our second step and our Steps to Respect program, those curriculums, as well as our Virtue of the Month and our mindfulness programs, students are learning how to label emotions. They're learning how to read the emotions of others. And they're being given permission to show such traits as compassion and caring. And they're taught that you don't have to just take that mean teasing or bullying, because to do otherwise would be to show weakness, but rather given the tools to stand up for themselves and to stand up for others. Students are taught how to express strong emotions using their words. And oftentimes that misbehavior that might be seen is a failed attempt at getting some underlying emotion met. And what emotional literacy allows is for those emotions to be named and then expressed positively, that kind of name it to tame it idea. A school that does allow, like Rowland Hall, boys to be true to themselves, that finds creative outlets for boys' high energy and physicality, is a school where boys will feel supported, valued, and nurtured. And if you feel your child is feeling otherwise, we do need to know about that. You need to let us know if that's not the case.
Okay, questions for Chuck? Okay, we're getting close to 10 o'clock. If you need to leave, go ahead. We're going to finish probably now 10 or 15 minutes. But if you get to leave, please, we said we'd go 8:30 to 10, so don't feel like you're being rude by leaving, but we're going to continue. So, but
should we tell them what's on tap?
So the things that are on tap is Jay's going to give us just his first impressions of our program this year, and then Wendell's going to wrap it up with how is the new strategic plan affecting the lower beginning schools. We've got some interesting statistics on our ERBs, which for those who stay, we'll share, but we're going to share in some other format as well anyway. So, Jay?
Very briefly, for those of you that do need to leave, please stay tuned. We are going to, this is such a great crowd, I want to let people know that we are going to be having 2 more opportunities this year, March 1st and April 19th, to come together as parents. We're formulating those topics right now, the Home and School Association. We're looking to focus on possibly childhood anxiety and also doing a presentation on growth mindset and how it pertains to the lower school. So please stay tuned for those. And if you have any suggestions or ideas for Home and School, we want this to be a place where parents can come and offer their ideas and suggestions. So please don't hesitate to email me. Katie Lieberman is my name. I'm in the directory. And we'll be coordinating 2 more events, so stay tuned for those that have to come.
And on that note, the other side of the note is that part of the idea of doing these was to have what used to be Board of Trustee meetings and exposure about topics be available to the whole community, but also the community know who's on the board and that we're moving forward and wanting to hear from people. So the board members would raise your hand and just point out who you are to people, because sometimes people say, well, who's on the board at the school? So if you just introduce yourselves real quickly.
Anna Topham.
Wood Boyle.
Brian Barker. Chris Bonmont.
Okay, so that part of the purpose of this was a request to give an idea of who the board members are, talk to them if you want, and open this up. And this is such a better presentation than when we just had 10 board members there. to have all of you here and hear the same things that they are. So thank you for coming. And now I'll give it back to Jay on his first impressions, and then Wendell will wrap it up.
So before I jump into my first impressions, I just want to take this as an opportunity to say thank you to all of you. I feel like in my first few months, I've just received such a warm welcome to this school and to this community, and it's just reinforced why I and my family chose to join Rowland Hall and to come to Salt Lake City. So a heartfelt thank you for all of that, especially in light of the arrival of our new little person just 3 weeks ago at this point. It's just been just a tremendous gift for our family to be here. So thank you. That being said, jumping into impressions of the lower school program, I mean, you kind of heard it. We got some good stuff going on here. It's a really strong program, and I wish I could take credit for the strength of our program, and I can't. Much of that work precedes me, and much of that work is due to the people you see sitting here, and to all of you as parents who contribute daily to what we do. In terms of specifics, I think there are 3 specific assets that have really led us to having a strong program here in the lower school. And first and foremost is that community that I just thanked and that I just referenced. The community here in the lower school is really what makes this place sing. And I feel that every day walking through the hallways, seeing kids and parents and teachers and staff members interact. I'm in awe of the quality of people that comprise our community. And I can see how if you've been here for a while, you may take that for granted. Trust me, as someone who's new and who's experiencing this place for the first time, it is a truly remarkable place comprised of remarkable people. And that, first and foremost, is kind of the foundation for the strength of our lower school program. Secondly, I see our strong mission. And if you're not familiar with our mission statement, it is we inspire students to lead ethical and productive lives through a college preparatory program that promotes the pursuit of academic and personal excellence. And the shorter vision statement is we inspire students to make a difference. And I think that's kind of a big, long-winded way of saying we focus on the whole student. It's not just the cognitive piece, but it's the social emotional piece. Every aspect of it goes hand in hand in terms of the learning that we're trying to do with our students here at Rowland Hall. And so through the lens of that strong mission statement, it really gives us focus in terms of what we are working on in the classrooms daily. And provides a purpose. I think we do academic rigor really well. And this mission statement provides a purpose and a context for that content that we cover. And the curriculum in our program allows us to provide opportunities for students to develop skills beyond just kind of the math facts and being able to write a sentence and punctuate a sentence. It gives them skills like communication, how they think through and communicate their understanding of a concept, how they collaborate and work together, how they empathize with others, their cultural competency or applying their creative confidence in different problem-solving situations. And those are skills that go beyond just the 3rd or 4th grade classroom, but translate well to home, or to the soccer field, or to friendships and relationships, to the stage if students are performing. And hopefully they translate to the next steps of their academic career, the next steps of their lives. And that's kind of the bigger picture, which again frames what we do through the lens of our strong mission statement. I think the strength and the clarity of our mission statement allows us to be really thoughtful and intentional in decision making and how we build our programs, how we grapple with issues that we're faced with. And as you've hopefully heard through our conversation this morning, nothing just is kind of happy circumstance. Everything is really thoughtful and intentional through that lens. And then the last kind of asset that has led us to this strong program in the lower school is what I've perceived or would describe as a culture of self-reflection and continuous improvement. And when I arrived in July as the new guy, I came and just started asking questions. In those first weeks, it was just because I didn't know anything. But as I've progressed and spent more time talking with folks,
the questions have gotten deeper into the hows and the whys of how our, what our program is about. And at some point I expected to encounter resistance or pushback when I was kind of pushing questions, and I haven't encountered that at all. And what I've sensed is a real openness and willingness to explore kind of the core beliefs and foundations of teaching and learning in support of the students that we serve in the classrooms. And to me, that's inspiring, and I feel like our whole team here in the lower school is committed to continually asking those questions and exploring those core beliefs. So if I kind of think about all these things, a strong community, a great group of people who are committed to creating this great place for kids to grow and learn. This mission statement that kind of serves as our guiding light as we navigate what's ahead in terms of current trends in education, in terms of what's happening in the world. And then if I think about this stance that we take as reflective, questioning educators, I think it's just really an exciting time here at the lower school. And I hosted a series of parent coffees at the beginning of the year, and one of the questions that I asked all parents was, our lower school program is good, what might make the lower school even better? And answers ranged kind of all over the place. One person wrote J, which kind of a lot of pressure, I would say. And the great thing that I'm feeling now is the real answer to that question is I can't make this school better. Again, that's a shared responsibility that we all have, and that's our team of teachers and administrators, of staff members. That's a responsibility for all of you in partnership with us between home and school. It's the responsibility of the students. And my job isn't to make the school better, it's to make sure the school is better. And hopefully as I grow as a leader within the community, with these assets in place, I just feel like this conversation will continue in really positive ways. So that's my first impressions of this place. And as the year goes on, if you have questions, my office is always open. I'm always happy to kind of process where we are, process where we're going, and partner with all of you to kind of envision what this place can be.
Great. So we'll wrap it up with Wendell.
It's nice to come out from behind the screen. Good morning, everyone. As a fellow lower school parent or current campus parent, I think we're incredibly fortunate, and I think you're getting a sense of that this morning. This is an unbelievable group of educators that are focused on giving our kids the most enriching and rewarding learning experiences possible. And I am awed and impressed on a daily basis working with the teachers in the beginning school and in the lower school on these initiatives that we've been talking about, and just on guiding the kids in our charge to higher and higher levels of growth and development. So it's just an incredible group. I'm supposed to talk about the strategic plan and what does the strategic plan mean for the McCarthey campus. And the first goal of the strategic plan is to enhance student learning experience. The second goal, to provide the most outstanding science and math programming in Mountain West. Third goal is not my realm, so I'm just going to leave that be. But it's becoming clear to me now in my second year here that you could have almost said that the first two goals of the strategic plan were written as a reflection of what the teachers and administrators and support staff on this campus are already doing. They are working every day to enhance the student learning experience and provide the most outstanding programs for our students. And despite all of the evidence that you've heard today that we are doing a really terrific job with our kids, there are no complacent teachers or administrators here. We're continually pushing each other to get even better. And I think that is a testament to how tremendous the people I work with are. So I just wanted to share one little bit of data. I was digging through some ERB scores with our middle school academic support director, and I have a meeting with some middle school teachers in just a little while. But while I was going through that, I'm kind of a data geek, and so I started looking through other reports from the lower school as well, and I synthesized some of those data, and I just wanted to share a little bit of that with you now. It's going to be really small, apparently. It's okay. So can we? That's good. So I'm looking up at the top chart here, and that top chart summarizes the three charts below it. So these are data from the last 4 years of ERB testing with our current 4th graders, 5th graders, and 6th graders. So for the case of the 6th graders, 4 full years of testing that we can go back and not only see where they began, but their growth over time. And if we look at the top chart summarizing those data, we're looking at what the ERB people call scale scores, which are dependent on the level of difficulty of the test, the number of questions the students get right, and so forth. And I have pulled out some data that I think are particularly important for us to think about. And the data are showing the average yearly growth in the scale scores for the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders over the last 4 years. And the folks at ERB would tell you that if a student grows 5 scale score points in a year, that's solid growth. Anywhere between 5 and 10, and you're going, that's really good. If it's below 5, we're going to want to look at that. If it's above 10, we're like, so verbal reasoning, reading comprehension, quantitative reasoning, and mathematics for the core testing areas in the ERB. The 4th, 5th, and 6th graders over the last 4 years have grown on average in verbal reasoning 17.7 scale points per year. The suburban independent, the suburban public schools, these are high achieving suburban public schools with demographics that are similar to our school's demographics. These are good public schools, and they've grown on average 13. Our independent school peers, 11.3. And if you look at the other 3 categories, reading comprehension, we outgrow both groups. Quantitative reasoning and mathematics, we outgrow both groups, triple the growth of our independent school peers. And our kids tend to enter the lower school grades roughly on par with the suburban public schools, which is not surprising. Again, the demographics are similar, and slightly behind the independent school group because many of those schools are more selective than we are with their admissions. But by the time they leave the lower school, they tend to have passed those independent school kids that they were slightly behind 2 or 3 years before. And if we can scroll to this last chart, you can see that. Okay, I think we can see the same. So in 2013, our current 6th graders we can go back to the reading comprehension and the mathematics. In 2012, they were slightly behind independent school peers, right with the suburban public schools, which again is a general trend. Every class is different, but this is a general trend. Strong students slightly behind some of the more selective independent schools. But at the end of these periods, we have grown more and we've closed the gap here. In mathematics, we started off 16 scale points behind 4 years ago. Now they are 9 points ahead of their independent school peers. So the teachers and the support staff in the lower school are doing an incredible job. And if you ask those teachers, they're going to tell you they were able to make those gains because the beginning school, the kinder, the first and second grade teachers set the stage for them. They set the table for them.
And just so you know that that's continuous, you'll be getting an email from me at the end of the week, which will discuss, we've done incredibly well athletically this fall, but academically particularly well. In our AP scores, which now reflects our older kids, we're really off the scale in terms of, again, they come in a little slightly below our independent school norms and our AP scores, which reflect what they've learned as opposed to SATs, which reflect perhaps where their ability, they call them, are going like this to this, in which our AP scores now 92% of our kids pass. Average national average pass rate is 60%. And in particularly in the math, our BC calculus, which is perhaps the hardest exam that you can take, it's the second year of college calculus. We had 14 of our seniors take it, which is over 20% of our seniors took it last year. Every senior got a perfect score, which is a 5, it's the highest score you can get. Every single senior, 14 took it, that's over 20% of the class. They started out average on the SATs and the PSATs and things like that. So again, it's the same concept of reflecting they're coming in. We're doing something right if you get every senior. I mean, that's almost unheard of to have every senior in a BC calculus class get a 5, which is essentially it is the highest score you can get. So this continues through the high school. And as I said, I'm very proud of, looking forward to that email going out that gives you some more information on that, how well those kids have done on their AP scores. So anything else to add, Wendell?
I would just say that, like, in my first year and a half here, one of the things that impressed me about the beginning school and lower school faculties was how tuned in they were with the social and emotional growth of our students. And I think most parents would agree our teachers know our kids really well, and that's hugely important too. But they're covering all the bases. They're killing it with the academics as well. And so we really have an amazing group of educators.
Well, and part of that reflects the fact, again, the research shows that kids learn better and do better if they are happy, if they feel safe, if they feel comfortable, if they feel cared for. They're actually, that is a bigger part of how well they'll achieve than actually how well you cover the material. So I think this reflects that the kids feel comfortable and therefore are willing to take the kind of challenges Jody throws at them and not worry about, well, I'm not sure I can get this right at first. So a question you've got for us. We're done. We're over our time. We'll stick around. If you have any questions, you're welcome to, but we've got to go over, and thank you very much.